It was a Thursday. I remember, because Thursdays meant spaghetti. Dad had this rule. Every Thursday, we had to sit down for spaghetti. It was our tradition. But that Thursday was different. Mom left that day, and everything changed. Dad came in later than usual. I was already at the table, staring at my cold spaghetti, wondering why he was late. When he walked in, I could tell something was wrong. His face was red, like he'd been crying. I'd never seen him like this before. "Anna," he said, his voice trembling, "we need to talk." I felt a knot in my stomach, like something terrible was about to happen. "What's wrong, Dad?" I asked, trying to sound brave, but my voice was shaky. He didn't sit. Instead, he paced back and forth, searching for the right words. Finally, he stopped, looked at me, and said, "It's your mom. She's not coming back." I didn't understand. Not coming back from where? It was spaghetti night. Where else would she be? "She left us for someone else," Dad said. The words hit me hard. Mom was gone. Why? Dad's voice broke. I didn't understand it either, but she made her choice and we have to deal with it. I was angry and sad, and I couldn't even know what to feel. Did she even say goodbye? Did she stop loving us? Dad sat next to me and hugged me. "I'm sure she loves you, Anna, but sometimes people make choices that hurt others. It's not fair, but it happens." I pushed him away, feeling a surge of anger. "I hate her," I yelled, not really meaning it, but maybe I did. Dad sighed and wiped his eyes. "I know. It's okay to be mad, but we'll get through this together." The rest of the evening was a blur. I didn't eat my spaghetti. How could I? Spaghetti night was ruined, and so was everything else. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Mom. Why did she leave? Didn't she care about us? Dad was hurting. I was hurting. It felt like she didn't care at all. It was the first time I realized people you trust can break your heart. As much as I wanted to hate her, I just wanted to understand why she left and if she ever thought about us. But those questions could wait. For now, I had to keep moving forward with Dad by my side. Then Sarah came into our lives like an unexpected twist that turns out to be a great addition. When Dad first told me about Sarah, I was skeptical. We were doing dishes and he seemed unusually nervous. "Anna, I've been seeing someone," he blurted out, almost dropping a plate. I froze, soap dripping from my hand. "What? Who?" I didn't know whether to feel angry or curious. "Her name's Sarah. She's really wonderful, Anna. I think you'll like her," he said, avoiding my gaze. I didn't say much, just nodded and continued with the dishes, but inside I was a mess of thoughts. Another woman. Was she trying to replace Mom? I wasn't ready for that. When I met Sarah for the first time, I was guarded. She came over for dinner, clearly nervous, which made me feel a bit better. She wasn't acting like she owned the place. "Hi, Anna. I've heard so much about you," she said, offering a genuinely warm smile. "Yes, all good things, I hope," I replied, trying to sound tough but probably coming off as awkward. The conversation was a bit stilted at first. Dad tried to fill the silence, but then Sarah mentioned a band I loved too. That broke the ice, and soon we were chatting like old friends. Sarah quickly became a part of our lives. She moved in a few months later, and it just felt right, like she was meant to be there. One day, after Sarah had moved in, I came home fuming from school. Kids had been making fun of me for not having a mom, and I'd had enough. I slammed the door and threw my backpack against the wall. Sarah rushed in, looking concerned. "What's wrong, Anna?" she asked, kneeling to be on my level. "Nothing. Just leave me alone." I snapped, not really meaning it. I was just so mad. Sarah didn't back off. "It doesn't look like nothing. Want to talk about it?" I hesitated, then let it all out. The kids at school, missing Mom, and the constant anger. Sarah just listened, her expression gentle. When I finished, she hugged me, not trying to replace Mom, but showing she was there for me. That meant everything. Anna, I'll never try to take your mom's place, but I'm here for you, as a friend, as family, whatever you need. I nodded, wiping away tears. Thanks, I said softly. From then on, Sarah wasn't just Dad's girlfriend or the woman living with us. She became part of our family. She helped me with homework, listened to my teenage rants, and even taught me how to apply eyeliner properly. She brought laughter and love into our home, things I didn't realize I'd missed so much. One evening, while we were watching a movie, I saw Sarah and Dad laughing on the couch. It hit me how much things had changed and improved. Thanks, Sarah, I whispered, hoping she'd hear me. For what? She asked, turning with a smile. For everything, I said, meaning it. Sarah squeezed my hand and turned back to the movie. That moment made it clear. Sarah was family. College was a whole new world. I moved onto campus studying economics because it seemed like a solid choice. I called Dad and Sarah every Sunday, sharing both the mundane and exciting details. They were my rock, my safety net amid the whirlwind of new experiences. One evening, while cramming for midterms with my roommate Mary, my phone rang. Seeing Dad's ID, I expected a routine check-in. Hey, Dad, what's up? I answered, trying to sound calm. But it wasn't Dad. Anna, you need to come home. It's your dad. He had a heart attack. My world stopped. What? Is he okay? Tell me he's okay. Sarah's silence was too long. He didn't make it, Anna. I'm so sorry. The phone nearly slipped from my hand. Mary's concerned face blurred as I choked out, Dad's gone. The next few days were a blur of tears, travel, and awful coffee. The funeral felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life fall apart. Dad was gone. Just like that. No warnings, no goodbyes. After the crowd of sympathetic faces had left, Sarah and I sat in the living room, surrounded by silence. I can't believe he's gone, I whispered, the words heavy. Sarah put her arm around me. I know, kiddo. It's going to be tough, but we'll get through this together. How, Sarah? How do we do this without him? I asked, tears coming again. We remember him. We keep living because that's what he would have wanted. And we take care of each other. Going back to college was hard. I wanted to drop out, come home, and stay with Sarah in the big empty house. But I knew that wasn't what Dad would have wanted. Go back, Anna, Sarah said when I mentioned it. Finish what you started. Make your dad proud. But what about you? I asked, feeling conflicted. I'll be fine. I'll be here when you come back. Always. So I went back. Mary, bless her, had turned our dorm room into a comforting haven when I returned. She didn't say much, just hugged me tight and let me be. It was exactly what I needed. Classes were a struggle. I couldn't focus and my motivation was low. I remember sitting in a lecture, staring blankly at the professor as their words felt like a foreign language. After class, my professor, Dr. Henderson, pulled me aside. Anna, is everything okay? Your participation has dropped significantly. I shrugged, the weight of grief making it hard to explain. It's my dad. He passed away. Dr. Henderson's expression softened. I'm so sorry to hear that, Anna. If you need anything, extensions or someone to talk to, my door is always open. Thanks, I mumbled, grateful but too numb to really feel it. That's how it went for a while. Just going through the motions, barely keeping afloat. But slowly, with support from Sarah, Mary, and even Dr. Henderson, things started to get a bit easier. Not better, but less impossible. By the end of the semester, I'd managed to pull my grades up and secure a decent GPA. It felt hollow without Dad to celebrate with me, but I knew he would be proud somewhere, and that thought gave me strength. Time flew by, and at 27, I had my own place and a career that was going somewhere. Bosses liked me, work was steady, and I felt like I had a handle on things. On a rare Saturday with no plans, I was ready to chill and binge-watch something. Then the doorbell rang, cutting through my lazy morning. I wasn't expecting anyone, probably a forgotten package or a neighbor starting small talk I wasn't in the mood for. When I opened the door, I was shocked to see my mom standing there. She looked different. Years and hard living had left her worn and rough around the edges. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my shock evident. Her eyes filled with tears, and she looked like she was about to break down. "I wanted to see you, Anna. It's been too long." Too long was an understatement. Years of silence, and now she shows up. Why now, after all this time? My voice was sharp, and I wasn't about to soften it. She wiped her eyes, taking a shaky breath. "I've always wanted to fix things between us. Your dad and Sarah wouldn't let me get close." That made me frown. "Come on, you expect me to believe that? Why didn't you reach out when I turned 18? I wasn't under their control then." Her excuse seemed rehearsed. "I was sick, Anna. Really sick. It took me a long time to get better, and when I did, I knew I had to try to connect with you, even if it was late." The conversation felt awkward and messy. Part of me wanted to slam the door, but another part, one I wasn't ready to admit, wanted to hear her out. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe something else. We talked, or rather, danced around the years of silence, each of us avoiding the real issues. Then, without warning, she said she had to go. Just like that, she left, leaving me with a storm of thoughts and no clear answers. The door clicked shut behind her, and I stood there, feeling a confusing mix of anger, sadness, and other emotions I couldn't name. She had her chance to explain, and all I got were excuses. Her visit had opened something I thought I had buried long ago. After Mom's unexpected visit, my head was a mess, buzzing with a million thoughts and no clear answers. I needed some clarity. There was only one person who could offer that: Sarah. I drove over to her place, the one she had moved into after Dad passed. It was a cozy house filled with warmth and memories, a sharp contrast to the confusion I felt. I knocked on the door, and Sarah answered with her usual welcoming smile, though it faltered when she saw my face. "Anna, what's wrong?" she asked, letting me in. I didn't even know where to start. "Mom showed up at my place today," I said as we settled in her living room, each with a cup of tea. Sarah's eyebrows shot up. "Your mom? After all these years?" "Yes," and she had a lot to say, mostly excuses. I sipped my tea, struggling to meet her gaze. "What did she say?" Sarah asked, her voice calm but tense. "She said you and Dad kept her away from me, that she was sick and couldn't reach out until now." The words tasted bitter as I relayed Mom's version of events. Sarah shook her head in disbelief. "Anna, that's not true. You know that. Your dad and I never stopped her from reaching out. She made her own choices." I knew it deep down, but hearing Mom's story stirred up doubts. Part of me wanted to believe there was a good reason for her leaving. Sarah reached over, squeezed my hand. "It's natural to want to find some good in her reasons, but you can't let her rewrite the past. You know what happened?" "Yeah, I do," I sighed, feeling a bit foolish. "She also said she was sick. We never knew if she was," Sarah said gently. "But even if she was, it doesn't change the years of silence. It doesn't excuse everything." Slowly, clarity began to cut through my emotional fog. Sarah had a way of making things make sense. She also talked about wanting to start over, to have some kind of relationship. Sarah's expression grew cautious. "Anna, people don't change overnight. If you let her back in, be careful. Protect yourself." Her words were a reminder of the pain that had taken so long to heal. "I don't even know if I want her in my life," I admitted, feeling overwhelmed. "Whatever you decide, I'm here for you. Just remember who she was and who she's been all these years." Sarah's advice was like a lighthouse guiding me through stormy seas. "I will. Thanks, Sarah." I meant it. Her perspective was a tether to reality when I felt adrift. After Mom's visit, she started coming by more often. At first, it was nice, catching up, exploring the mother-daughter bond we never had. But then things changed. It wasn't just coffee and small talk anymore. She started hinting at needing money, first for a doctor's bill, then for some rehab she claimed was for her illness recovery. Each time, she piled on the affection, something I wasn't used to from her. Despite Sarah's earlier warnings, I found myself unable to say no. Maybe it was guilt, or maybe I just missed that maternal affection. Then she hit me with a real shocker. Out of nowhere, she said, "I found this great apartment right next to yours. Wouldn't it be wonderful to be neighbors?" I thought it sounded nice until she dropped the bombshell. She wanted me to pay the entire year's rent up front, which came to 24 grand. I nearly choked on my coffee. "You what? That's a lot of money, Mom." She played the hurt card like a pro. "I thought you'd want to help your mother," she said, sounding wounded. "I do, but that's a lot. I need to think about it," I stammered, feeling blindsided. She didn't take it well, got all huffy, and stormed out. I felt like the worst daughter ever for not immediately handing over the cash. I needed advice from someone who wasn't involved. Naturally, I called Sarah. "Hey," I said, jumping straight in. "Mom asked me to pay a year's rent for her minus 24K. What do I do?" Sarah's response was immediate, filled with concern and frustration. "Anna, are you serious? After everything, you're considering this?" I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "I don't know, Sarah. She's my mom. She's also the woman who left you and your dad. You don't owe her anything," Sarah said sharply. Her words stung, but she was right. Still, I couldn't shake the desire for a real relationship with my mom, even if it meant paying for it. Against my better judgment, I agreed to Mom's request. But I wasn't completely naive. I made sure my name was on the lease, just in case things went wrong. When I told Sarah, there was a long silence on the line. "Anna, I hope you know what you're doing," she finally said, her voice heavy with concern. "Yeah, me too," I replied, though I had no idea what I was doing. But there was no turning back now. I'd made my choice and hoped it wouldn't come back to haunt me. A week after the apartment fiasco, I decided a surprise housewarming might help smooth things over. Maybe it would show Mom that I was making an effort to bridge the gap between us. So there I was, outside her door, ready to surprise her, when I overheard something that stopped me cold. Mom was inside, boasting to her new friends about how she tricked me into paying for her apartment for a year. "Can you believe it? My daughter paid for this place for a whole year. She's as foolish as her old man was," she laughed. My heart dropped. I felt a rush of disbelief and anger, but I pushed the door open and walked in before I could second-guess myself. Inside, the scene was exactly what I expected. Drunken strangers cluttering the living room, with Mom holding court. The room went silent as everyone turned to look at me, the target of her mockery. Mom's surprise quickly turned to a sneer. "Look who decided to show up. Come to see what your generosity bought." Her friends chuckled, treating me like a punchline. I was boiling inside but kept my composure, forcing a smile. "Actually, I came to share some interesting news about the rent," I said. Mom's smirk grew wider. "Oh yeah? What's that?" I pulled out the rental agreement, holding it up like a victory flag. "I only paid for a month, not a year." The room went silent. Mom's face went pale as she realized her deception had been exposed. Her friends began to retreat, confusion replacing their laughter. Without waiting for her to come up with an excuse, I turned and walked out, leaving her to deal with the fallout. As I left, her angry shouts followed me, but they didn't bother me. I felt lighter, as if I'd finally shed a burden I hadn't fully recognized. After confronting Mom, I headed straight to Sarah. I needed her perspective on the chaos. Before I could say much, Mom stormed in, threatening to sue me for every penny I had and demanding lifelong support as if years of neglect could be erased with money. Sarah, instead of getting angry, just laughed. One of those incredulous laughs. "You're going to sue? Really?" Her amazement was clear. Mom kept shouting about rights and money until Sarah pulled out a stack of papers from a drawer. "These rights?" Sarah asked, showing documents that proved Mom had abandoned her parental duties long ago. Mom's face went from fiery to deflate in an instant. 2 weeks later, news broke that Mom had been kicked out of the apartment. She refused to leave, and the cops had to get involved. She showed up at my place next, banging on the door and making threats through it. I'd had enough. I yelled back, "Knock it off, or I'm calling the cops." It worked. She left and hasn't shown up since. Sitting there after she'd gone, I realized I was finally free from her threats, manipulations, and the weight of her expectations. For the first time in a long time, I could breathe easy.
I slumped back in the worn leather chair, the sterile scent of the clinic filling my nostrils as I waited for Dr. Henshaw. Doyle squeezed my hand reassuringly, his warm smile a stark contrast to the knot tightening in my stomach. We'd been trying for a baby for over a year, and this was supposed to be a routine checkup. The door swung open, and a flustered nurse bustled in, her arms laden with files. "Mrs. Carter, Mr. Carter," she nodded, rifling through the papers. "Ah, congratulations are in order, it seems," she beamed at Doyle. "The little one is due in 7 months. Alara must be over the moon." The room tilted as the words hit me like a sledgehammer. Alara? A baby? My heart pounded in my ears as I shot Doyle an accusatory glare, but his brow was furrowed in confusion. I think you have the wrong file," he stammered, his face paling. The nurse's eyes widened, and she hastily checked the paperwork. "Oh, goodness, you're right. My apologies." She scurried out, leaving a suffocating silence in her wake. Doyle cleared his throat. "Marion, honey, it was just a mix-up. You know how scatterbrained some of these nurses can be." His words should have reassured me, but something nagged at the back of my mind. A tiny splinter of doubt that would soon fester into a gaping wound of betrayal. The drive home was a blur, the city lights melting into streaks of color as my mind raced. Doyle's reassurances rang hollow, drowned out by the nurse's words echoing in my head. Alara, a baby due in 7 months. As soon as we stepped through the front door, I rounded on him. "Who is Alara?" I demanded, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and dread. Doyle sighed, rubbing his temples. "Babe, it was an honest mistake, nothing more." "Don't babe me," I snapped. "I'm not an idiot, Doyle. That nurse clearly knew something I don't." His eyes narrowed. "You're overreacting, Marion. It was a simple mix-up of files, that's all." I opened my mouth to protest, but something in his coat pocket caught my eye, the corner of a crumpled receipt. Without thinking, I snatched it out. "Hey!" Doyle lunged for me, but I danced out of his reach, my heart pounding as I smoothed out the paper. Prenatal vitamins. The receipt was for a bottle of prenatal vitamins from a pharmacy downtown. I looked up at him, my vision blurring with tears. "Tell me the truth, Doyle, right now." His shoulders slumped in defeat. I don't know how to say this." "Try me," I growled through gritted teeth. He took a deep breath. "There's someone else. Alara. She's pregnant with my child." The words landed like a physical blow, knocking the wind out of me. I stumbled back, clutching the receipt like a lifeline. Doyle reached out to me, his eyes pleading. "Marion, I'm so sorry. It just happened. But I still love you, I swear." I recoiled from his touch, bile rising in my throat. "How could you?" I choked out. "After everything we've been through, trying for a baby of our own?" He flinched, shame flickering across his face. I know, and I hate myself for it. But we can work through this, I promise." Rage bubbled up inside me, scalding and all-consuming. I grabbed the nearest object, a ceramic vase, and hurled it at him with all my strength. He ducked just in time, the vase shattering against the wall behind him. "Get out," I seethed, my body shaking with fury. "Get out of my house, you lying, cheating bastard." For once, Doyle didn't argue. He hung his head and trudged out the door, leaving me alone with the shards of my broken heart scattered at my feet. The next few weeks were a waking nightmare. I functioned on autopilot, going through the motions at work while my personal life crumbled around me. Doyle had moved out, taking his things while I was at the office. A small mercy, I supposed. I didn't think I could bear to see his face again so soon. Still, the questions swirled endlessly in my mind. How long had this been going on? Who was this Alara woman? And why, after all our struggles to conceive, would he throw it all away like this? I knew I needed answers, if only to find some shred of closure. So I started digging. It didn't take long to uncover the truth about Alara Benson, a 29-year-old graphic designer at a trendy marketing firm downtown. Social media painted the picture of a vivacious, free-spirited woman with a zest for life, the perfect counterpoint to my own sensible, by-the-book existence with Doyle. A few carefully worded inquiries revealed that she was indeed pregnant, just over 4 months along. The timeline matched the nurse's words at the clinic, confirming my worst fears. Doyle had been lying to me for months, maybe longer. But the deepest cut came from an unexpected source, my own fertility doctor, Dr. Henshaw. During a follow-up appointment, he made an offhand comment about Doyle's other obligations causing delays in our treatment plan. What other obligations? I demanded, my heart racing. Are you talking about his affair? Dr. Henshaw's eyes widened, and he immediately backpedaled. Mrs. Carter, I assure you, doctor-patient confidentiality prevents me from discussing Mr. Carter's private matters. But the damage was done. I felt a sickening pit open up in my stomach as the pieces fell into place. Doctors Henshaw had known about Doyle's infidelity all along and said nothing, allowing me to pour my heart and soul into a hopeless dream of starting a family with a man who had already moved on. I stormed out of his office, tears of rage and humiliation stinging my eyes. How could they have betrayed me like this? Doyle was one thing, but Dr. Henshaw was supposed to be on my side, guiding me through this arduous journey. As I sat in my car, the hurt and anger swirled together, hardening into a resolve as cold and unyielding as steel. They would pay for this, both of them. I would make sure of it, no matter what it took. Armed with Alara's address and a burning determination for vengeance, I showed up at her sleek downtown apartment building one evening after work. My heart was pounding as I buzzed her unit, half expecting her not to answer when a stranger's voice crackled through the intercom. Hello? I took a deep breath, steadying my nerves. Alara Benson? My name is Marion Carter. I think we need to talk. There was a pause, then a resigned sigh. Come on up. The ride up in the elevator was agonizing, my palms slick with nervous sweat. What was I going to say? How would she react? The door swung open before I could think too hard, revealing a petite woman with tousled dark hair and a slightly rounded belly, the unmistakable curve of early pregnancy. You must be Marion, she said, her voice carefully neutral as she stepped aside to let me enter. I'm guessing this is about Doyle? I nodded mutely, unable to find the words as a fresh wave of hurt swept over me at the sight of her pregnant form. Alara sank onto the plush sofa, absently rubbing her stomach as she studied me with those soulful eyes. How much do you know? The question snapped me out of my stupor, anger flaring hot in my chest. Enough, I bit out. Enough to know that my husband knocked you up behind my back. She flinched at my harsh tone but held my gaze steadily. I had no idea he was married, Marion. Not at first. Of course he'd lied to her, too. Typical Doyle. I opened my mouth, ready to unleash the full force of my fury, but Alara held up a hand, cutting me off. Please let me explain. She took a deep, shuddering breath. We met at a work party back in August and just hit it off. Things moved quickly after that, but he assured me he was single, separated from his wife. I didn't find out the truth until a few weeks ago, when I happened to see a family photo of you two on his desk at home. My stomach churned at her words, the gravity of Doyle's betrayal hitting me all over again. Alara looked at me imploringly, tears shimmering in her eyes. I swear, Marion, if I'd known, I never would have gotten involved with him. You have to believe me. In that moment, as I stared at this woman carrying my husband's child, I saw the same hurt, the same anguish reflected in her expression that I felt clawing at my insides. We were both victims of Doyle's selfish lies. A twisted sense of kinship washed over me then, bonding us in our shared pain. This poor woman had been just as deceived as I was, maybe even more so. Slowly, I crossed the space between us and sank onto the couch beside her. I believe you, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. And Doyle is going to pay for what he did to both of us. Alara's eyes widened, then hardened with resolve. She gave a brisk nod. Tell me what you need me to do. The weeks leading up to Doyle's birthday party were a flurry of covert planning and deception. Alara and I worked tirelessly, coordinating every detail under the guise of throwing him a surprise celebration. Little did he know, we had something much more explosive in store. "You're sure about this?" Alara asked one evening as we pored over the guest list. "There's no going back after tonight." I glanced around my living room at the cheerful decorations and gift-wrapped boxes stacked in the corner, all a carefully constructed ruse. Absolutely, he needs to be exposed in front of everyone who thinks he's this upstanding, trustworthy guy. Her jaw tightened and she gave a resolute nod. "Then let's do it." The big day arrived and our plan unfolded perfectly. One by one, Doyle's colleagues, friends, even his own mother filed into my house, all eager to surprise the guest of honor. Finally, the man himself arrived, striding through the door with a bemused grin. "What's all this? Surprise!" we cried in unison, feigning delight as cameras flashed and people swarmed around to greet him. For a moment, Doyle just blinked at the crowd, utterly blindsided. Then his gaze found mine, and his expression shifted to one of wariness. "Marion?" "Happy birthday, darling," I said, layering on sugary sweetness as I crossed the room to give him a lingering kiss on the cheek. "We've got one more surprise for you." Alara stepped forward then, her blossoming baby bump impossible to miss. A hush fell over the room as realization dawned on Doyle's face. "You," he choked out, paling rapidly. "What are you doing here?" "Congratulations, babe," I said with saccharine venom. "You're going to be a father." Stunned silence hung in the air, punctuated only by a few shocked gasps from the crowd. Doyle's eyes darted around wildly, like a cornered animal. "Marion, Alara, please," he began desperately. "This wasn't how I wanted you to find out." A derisive snort came from the back of the room. "Find out you've been lying and cheating, you mean?" I turned to see Doyle's mother pushing through the throng, fury etched into every line of her face as she regarded her son with disgust. "How could you, Doyle? How could you do this to these poor women?" It was like a dam bursting. Furious whispers and accusations rippled through the guests as the truth sank in. Colleagues, friends, people who had trusted and respected Doyle now looked at him with contempt. I drank in every agonizing second, watching his world crumble before my eyes just as mine had weeks ago. This was karma, plain and simple. Doyle whirled on me, anguish and anger warring on his features. "Is this what you wanted, Marion? To humiliate me in front of everyone I know?" Meeting his gaze, I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. "It's what you deserve." The fallout from Doyle's birthday party was swift and brutal. Within days, news of his sordid affair had spread like wildfire, destroying his once sterling reputation in our small community. But that was just the start of his reckoning. I'll never forget the morning his boss, Richard Henderson, showed up at my door. The grim-faced CEO had clearly heard the rumors and demanded to know the truth. "Is it true, Marion?" he asked, his voice heavy with disappointment. "Has Doyle been unfaithful?" I met his gaze steadily, no trace of pity for the man who had so callously betrayed my trust. "It's true, Richard. He got another woman pregnant while we were trying to have a baby of our own." Richard's shoulders slumped, and he removed his glasses to pinch the bridge of his nose. "You have to understand, this is a family company with strong moral values." He trailed off, but I knew exactly what he meant. Marketing Millennial Solutions had built its brand on the persona of happy, wholesome influencers, the last people you'd expect to be embroiled in a salacious cheating scandal. "I see," I said, folding my arms across my chest. "So what happens now?" Richard let out a weary sigh. "I'm afraid his position is untenable. There's a strict morality clause in all our employee contracts. Infidelity." He shook his head. "I have no choice but to terminate Doyle's employment, effective immediately." Just like that, Doyle's high-powered marketing career, the culmination of years of hard work and ruthless ambition, went up in flames, all because he couldn't keep it in his pants. I should have felt vindicated, or at least satisfied that he was finally facing real consequences for his actions. But as I watched Richard's car pull away, I realized this was only the beginning. The lawyers came next, first mine, then Alara's. Turns out my dear husband's indiscretions had opened him up to a tidal wave of legal troubles on top of his professional disgrace. Intentional infliction of emotional distress, fraud, breach of contract, the charges piled up, each one another nail in the coffin of the life Doyle had so meticulously constructed. He tried to fight it at first, pleading with me to show mercy, to think of all our years together. But I was unswayed. His pleas fell on deaf ears. Alara, too, was unrelenting in her demands for restitution, adamant that he take responsibility for the harm he'd caused us both. In the end, the court sided with the wronged women, awarding us both substantial settlements directly from Doyle's assets and future earnings. The financial blow was as devastating as the public humiliation, stripping him of the wealth and status he'd so coveted. As I watched the once confident, successful man slink away in disgrace, I felt an odd sense of hollowness. This was the vengeance I'd sought, the karma I'd craved, and yet it didn't bring the closure or relief I'd expected. Doyle was ruined, his world in ashes around him. But the anguish of his betrayal still lingered deep within me, an open wound that may never fully heal. In the weeks following the legal fallout, Doyle became a shadow of his former self. Gone was the cocky swagger, the easy confidence that had once drawn me to him. Now he just seemed broken. Not that I had any sympathy left for the man who had so thoroughly shattered my trust and our vows. If anything, seeing him reduced to a hollow husk only reinforced my resolve. He tried, in his own pathetic way, to make amends. Endless apologies and promises to change his ways, to be the man I deserved. But his words rang hollow, meaningless platitudes from someone desperate to cling to the lie of the life we'd once shared. Alara, at least, wanted nothing to do with his groveling. She'd made it clear from the start that she planned to cut Doyle out of her life completely once the baby was born, raising the child free from his toxic influence. I almost envied her certainty, her ability to simply walk away and start fresh. For me, the wounds went deeper, the scars of his betrayal an ever-present ache in my heart. Then one rainy evening, there was a heavy knock at my door. I opened it to find Doyle on my doorstep. Shoulders hunched against the downpour, a familiar hangdog expression etched into his features. "Marion," he said hoarsely, water dripping from his soaked hair. "We need to talk." Part of me wanted to slam the door in his face, to shut him out, as he had shut me out of his life for all those months with Alara. But something in his haunted eyes gave me pause. With a resigned sigh, I stepped back to let him in from the rain. "Make it quick, Doyle. I'm done playing games." He flinched at my blunt words, then nodded solemnly as he followed me into the living room. "I know, and you're right. You deserve better than any more of my lies and deception." For a moment he seemed to struggle, Adam's apple bobbing as he swallowed hard. "I came to say goodbye, Marion, and to beg for your forgiveness one last time." I opened my mouth, a biting retort on my lips, but he pressed on, his voice thick with emotion. "What I did, there are no excuses, no justifications for the pain I caused you and Alara. I was selfish and arrogant, taking both of you for granted in my pursuit of I don't even know what, honestly." His gaze, those warm brown eyes that had once made my heart skip a beat, bored into me with raw sincerity. "You were the best thing that ever happened to me, Marion, and I threw it all away like a damn fool." I swallowed hard past the lump forming in my throat, my anger slowly ebbing in the wake of his chillingly honest confession. A part of me, the part that still stubbornly clung to the memories of the man I'd fallen in love with, wanted so badly to offer him absolution. But I knew that was impossible now. Too much had happened, too much trust betrayed. The old Doyle, the man I thought I knew, was gone, and no amount of pleading would undo the rift he himself had created. So instead, I simply said, "Goodbye, Doyle. I hope you can find some measure of peace for your sake, but we're through." His face crumpled for the briefest moment before the mask slipped back into place, leaving only a haunted sort of resignation behind. With a somber nod, he turned and let himself out, the door clicking shut behind him with a sobering finality. I stood there alone in the silence, raindrops pattering against the windows, wondering if that gaping void in my heart would ever heal. The months that followed were a slow, painful process of picking up the shattered pieces of my life and trying to rebuild. Doyle's betrayal had left me adrift, questioning everything I thought I knew about love, trust, and the dreams we'd once shared. But I was determined not to let his selfish actions define me. I was more than just a scorned wife. I was a strong, capable woman who deserved a fresh start. The settlement from the legal battles had left me with a sizable nest egg, enough to finally pursue that long-deferred dream of opening my own cozy little bookshop. It seemed fitting, in a way, surrounding myself with stories altri, finding solace between the pages when my own narrative had taken such a dark turn. I spent weeks scouring property listings until the perfect spot opened up, a quaint corner storefront in a charming downtown district. From the moment I stepped inside the aging but sturdy brick building, I could envision it all. Overstuffed armchairs flanking a fireplace, shelves brimming with well-loved tomes, and the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafting through the air. Transforming that empty shell into my literary haven was grueling work, between renovations, sourcing inventory, and handling all the logistical minutiae of opening a small business. But I poured myself into the project, finding refuge in the simple, methodical tasks that allowed me to push Doyle and all the pain of his deception to the back of my mind, if only for a little while. The day we opened our doors, I could scarcely believe how far I'd come. As I watched the first customers trickle in, marveling at the cozy, book-lined interior with its plush seating and the inviting espresso bar, a sense of pride swelled in my chest. This was my life, my passion, profoundly my own, in a way nothing with Doyle ever could be. In the months that followed, the shop became my sanctuary, a cherished space where I could connect with others over the shared love of a good story. I savored the daily interactions with my patrons, swapping recommendations and bonding over the ability of the written word to transport, console, and inspire us. It was during one such chat with a regular customer that I heard the news. Alara had given birth to a healthy baby girl and left town shortly after, determined to start over somewhere far from the lingering shadows of Doyle's deceit. I couldn't begrudge her that. We had both been through the emotional ringer, and she deserved the chance to raise her daughter in peace, unburdened by the past. In a way, we were kindred spirits, joined by our shared trauma yet emerging from the ashes like twin phoenixes, reborn and resolute in our fresh beginnings. Though our paths had diverged, I knew a part of me would always be bound to Alara through the crucible of Doyle's betrayal that had ultimately brought us together. We exchanged numbers through the customer who had relayed the news, and a few days later, my phone pinged with an image, Alara cradling her newborn daughter, both of them bathed in golden sunlight. A simple caption accompanied the picture. "Here's to new chapters." As I traced the curve of the tiny infant's face, I felt a profound sense of release wash over me. Like Alara, I too was turning the page and allowing the hurt to finally begin fading. Our story may have started in darkness and deception, but we had both found the courage to rewrite our own endings, this time on our own terms.